Aloha, everyone. My name is Anderson Lay, and I'm the Artistic Director for the Hawaii International Film Festival, or HIFF. This is the inaugural event to kick off HIFILM, HIFF's new industry hub of masterclasses, workshops, and panels to provide career development, networking, and pipeline programs for Hawaii's creative content industries. The mandate for HIFILM is to explore pathways for fulfilling work in the industry and doing so from the islands, either on the ground or remotely. But before we start, I do want to acknowledge the current strikes happening in Hollywood, starting off with the WGA strike, which has gone 70 plus days now, and that's just a couple days ago has been joined by SAG-AFTRA, who has joined their sister union at the picket lines, fighting for fair wages, solidifying guidelines to ensure career advancement, especially for new members, diminishing financial returns in the age of streaming, and the existential crises of AI and new technologies. Most of the panelists participating today belong to one or both of these unions, so we are going to follow guidelines set in place by both SAG and WGA for their participation, including making this a free panel that is non-commercial and for education purposes only. We will also talk in generalities, and focus on career advice and chat about genres and content format instead of specific titles. Okay? All right, cool. In this first panel, we discuss the boom of voiceover or VO acting opportunities in the content streaming marketplace. In the move for more diversity and equitable representation, we will start off our conversation with the people of the global majority voiceover list, or PGM VO list, as our starting off point, and have a great chat on this booming space in acting and acting remotely with our esteemed panelists who are active in VO and see how they got started, learn about the tricks of the trade, and where it's going from here. So really quickly, what is the PGM VO list? Operated by Voices of Color, the main purpose of the PGM VO list is to present a large-scale showcase of global majority, or also known as BIPOC or POC, or POC, people of color voices, that is both representative and accessible to support increasing efforts for inclusion in the VO space. This growing database exists to serve and amplify the underprivileged, the underrepresented, the othered. But it's also more than just a showcase. The PGM VO list is a community, a place of safety, and a foundation to which education, opportunities, and social awareness can take place. Founded by actor Edward Hong, the database is an incredible resource in this new landscape of streaming services. For example, streamers hiring Asian American VO actors to dub K-drama hits, for example. The mainstreaming of anime across multiple platforms, and the explosion of scripted podcasts and audiobooks, thanks to the ubiquity of apps that at the touch of a button. We will be joined by VO actors based in Los Angeles, Hawaii, and Singapore, who are actively working remotely from their home studios. We also will discuss the founding of the PGM VO list, how the global pandemic was the catalyst for the formation of the list, and the void that it filled in Hollywood where content is king. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today, and then we're going to start off with Edward Hong, who, like I said earlier, the founder of the list itself. Edward is a Korean-American actor based in LA who has somehow etched out a working acting career for the past decade on TV, film, commercials, theater, and voiceovers. In the producing realm, he produced and starred in his own content with the horror comedy short film Make-A-Wish, which was in too many festivals, most notably being Holly Shorts, Rhode Island International, Fantaspoa, Film Quest, and many more. Recently, he has also cast and directed multiple English dubs for numerous streamers and the major streamers, for example. Finally, I'm trying choosing my words very carefully. Finally, and most proudly, he is the proud father of 3 cats and has an unhealthy obsession with Cinnabons. Obviously, this is written by Edward. So, Edward, welcome. Aloha.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And our next panelist is Lauren Chu, born in Taiwan and raised in Singapore. Lauren's experiences come from multiple cultures. She speaks 3 languages so far: English, Mandarin, and Korean, and code switches between Singaporean and American accents. Her most recent voiceover projects include video games. She'll be okay, like Diablo 4, Black Desert Online, Shadowverse, HTC Vive XR Elite, which is a VR headset, and others, and the White Vault audio drama. Lauren, welcome to the panel. Aloha.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And our next panelist is from Hawaii. Barry Kealoha is a singer, actor, and bilingual voiceover artist based on the beautiful island of Oahu. She was born and raised in Southern California, but has called many places home, including New York City, Madrid, and Paris. In addition to performing her one-woman show, Island Girl, all over the Pacific on cruise ships, she is a prolific VO talent and audiobook narrator, and can currently be heard as the voice of Central Pacific Bank. Hi, Barry, how are you?
Aloha. I'm good. Aloha.
And our next panelist is Vivi Nguyen. Vivi is a Vietnamese American actress hailing from Anaheim, California, and based in Los Angeles. She studied acting at USC's School of Dramatic Arts and has provided voices for such and various animated shows. You've probably seen a lot of her shows on the major streamers. She is also an audiobook narrator and has narrated numerous titles for HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House, just to name a few. And she is represented by Buchwald. Vivi, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And finally, our final panelist is Earl Balon. Earl is an actor, improviser, voice artist, sometimes writer, producer based in LA. Earl is the current artistic director of Room to Improv, an Asian American improv troupe serving the LA community and beyond. You can hear him in such video games and animated projects as, it's okay to talk about them, Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider Survivor Trilogy, Tekken, Bloodline.
Maybe not those.
Okay, oh, sorry. God, sorry. And other things that are from major streamers. So precarious. He currently serves
like just walking on this edge of a knife. Yeah,
exactly.
Who knows?
He currently serves as associate producer and actor on their feature film Lumpia with a Vengeance, which world premiere at HIFF, year one of the pandemic, 2020, which won the HIFF 40 Audience Award for Narrative Feature, where we had it premiere in the pop-up drive-in at the Ala Moana Center. It was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Aloha. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, welcome, panelists. So I'm going to just start off and kick off as our kind of starting out point, the list itself, the PGM VO list. So, Eddie, as you are the founder of the list, can you talk about the inception of it and why you decided to take the reins to fill this void?
It started in 2020, right after, like a month after when the global Black Lives Matter movement happened after the murder of George Floyd, and then the discussion of needing meaningful diversity in all spaces were occurring. And so in the entertainment realm, that everyone was talking about that. And so around this time, I think I just decided, I'm just going to create a Google spreadsheet to highlight the voiceover actors, because at the time, the voiceover industry was one of the things that could survive when the pandemic first kicked in. And also a lot of people were asking, like, I don't know any Asian voiceover actors. I don't know any Black voiceover actors or Latino or Indigenous. And it's always ridiculous when people ask these questions, because I think it's ridiculous, because we as the global majority know that we know so many. We know all the Asian, we know the Black, we know the Latino and Indigenous. They're out there, but then we have to take a step back and realize for white people, they literally don't know any, which can be frustrating. And so this database was designed to just make it easy for them, be like, here it is. And not just people who were represented by awesome agencies, which many wonderful voiceover actors are, but to show that there are just as many, if not more, wonderful actors who are not represented. That was the intention of the database. And so it started back then, and I put a lot of hard work into it. As where it is now, currently, it has been passed off. The torch has been passed to a wonderful organization called Voices of Color, to which Lauren Chu is part of. It is in excellent hands with them in terms of championing diversity in the voiceover space. So it feels good to I did the work, and now it's off to people who are honestly much better than I am. So but it was a pleasure to create this, despite some understandable frustrations along the way of like trying to get people to really embrace using this database. But I'm glad that it still exists. It's still being used. We've had many people come out to use the database. Lots of companies and casting directors and whatnot. So I'm glad that it is taken seriously. But I know that there is always room for growth for more.
So did it start off literally as like a Google spreadsheet?
Yes, it was a Google spreadsheet. It was insane because anyone could have inputted their information.
Yeah.
And some actors, just because they're actors, would put themselves at the top of the list, like even though it was supposed to be alphabetical order. And I'm just like, guys, this is not all right. So for about 5 months, or if not more, it was just constantly maintaining this Google spreadsheet so that no silly person was like doing some crazy thing. Like I would see actors like do like size 40 font and put their names like gigantic proportions. And I'm just like, why do you guys do this? And so it was only until people would tell me about like what it's used now through the Airtable service, which was to streamline it, to password protect it, especially because we do have minors who are on the database. So it was essential to have security in that. Not being said, it could be better because Airtable is not perfect, but it was definitely a much better step than from our crazy Google spreadsheet days. So the fact that it survived and the fact that people actually took it seriously was, I'm very happy and proud of that. That people actually did take it seriously. That it continued to evolve where it is now.
So I have two questions regarding the list. So how did you how did the gatekeepers, like the agencies, how did they go, oh, well, how they basically actually said this is serious, like this is actually a resource, an asset? And secondly, when did you see, because as actors you're in LA or whatever, when did you see the database grow with having more talent outside of California, for example, up here on the list?
In terms of gatekeepers, I think the biggest one that was a huge advocate for when I created it, I am and still with a voiceover agency called Atlas. And so the founder of it was very passionate, was created even during the Excel sheet days. Like she was spreading it to other voiceover agencies and casting directors and companies. And she would just be telling everyone that this database exists. And so it wasn't without the help of such people like Atlas and also like so many voiceover actors who shared it that made it possible. So in terms of gatekeepers, I think Atlas was probably one of the biggest because they started it off. And then since then, other companies have followed suit. Some gatekeepers have been very welcoming about it, and some not so much. But that comes with the territory. Like not everyone is going to embrace such a massive resource with welcome arms, because it is massive. It's just when people, because that was what it was supposed to be, to literally overwhelm you with possibilities, as opposed to like it just doesn't exist. I don't know anyone, so I'm just going to cast a white person to say Vietnamese phrases, and I'm like, yeah, that's ridiculous. And so so in terms of gatekeepers, I was not gentle about how I would tell gatekeepers how to use it. It was very forceful. Just be like, just use the database. Just fucking use it. Sorry for cursing, but that was basically the tone of it. It was very aggressive. And for the most part, it did the job. I mean, so I think it got out pretty clearly that there was a database and there was a founder who was very angry and very passionate about what he wanted to do. So I think it got as far as it did because of that. Now, I'm glad that right now where it is, there are much better people to handle it forward from there. But I think kind of like how a lot of the movements happen. Is just like, yeah, you just needed a really stupid, angry person to kind of kickstart it off, and then just have more saner people take over from there. So that's where it is.
And how about the seeing more talent on the database outside of LA?
Yes. So it started obviously with, actually at that time, it started just, I was focusing just to be about Asian voiceover actors, but then people did come up to me, or rather virtually, since we were all in our homes, that to expand it to other ethnic minorities. And so I thought, sure, I have nothing else to do, so let's do it. And so it expanded rapidly because voiceover is an industry where there are tons of actors around the world, and because technology has come to the point that voiceover can be done wherever you are. Now, being said, there are always these really stupid legal ramifications of working overseas and paperwork and all that, but technically we are at a point where you can literally do it anywhere, and the voice quality can sound just as good, if not better, than like if someone was recording it locally. And so I think it didn't take much to get other actors around the world to sign up for it. It is challenging because most of the biggest companies that do voiceover are located in America, and there is kind of a US first mentality that they tend to not, use remote actors as much. But this is where I think, thankfully, to, actors being vocal about it, to kind of change the conversation, as well as like using remote actors, because it gives them variety. It gives them difference. It gives them like, it's not just the same old, because, and, we can probably talk about this later. The problem of a lot of industry stuff, especially voiceover, is that it's just a small circle, and it's just a continuous circle where it's the same people being used constantly. And to a degree, it still exists now, but I think the purpose of the database is to show that you can take chances on new people. And so I think by the fact that we have so many remote actors shows that this is a possibility.
Yeah, and then also you see a lot of, there's also a lot of voice actors who are based in like other states in the U.S., right, or even across North America. It's like, we worked on a project together, and like there were actors from Texas or New York or whatever. So like that's great to hear that. And then you pass the baton or wash your hands of maintaining the PGM VO list to Voices of Color. And Lauren, maybe, I don't know if you can answer this, but how is it maintained now? What is the kind of, how do you, the upkeep and the updating of the list?
Yeah, maybe I can answer that. So, yeah, because this thing really happened overnight. So we're still trying to keep up with maintaining, taking over all the responsibilities, but it basically works the same. We have the PGM VO List Facebook group, which is limited to people who are on the list, but we also have our Voices of Color VOC Discord server for everybody who wants to be a part of this community. Yeah, and something that we found was a little challenging was getting casting directors to use the actual list through like the Airtable thing, because I think something about the technicalities of it was like, it was really like, I think they find it a little difficult to use.
Yeah, and then just to clarify, like Airtable is kind of like, it's an online database. It's kind of like FileMaker Pro. It's like something like that. Like, Airtable, we use Airtable at the festival. Everyone uses Airtable now. But go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah. So because we've it's been a thing where it becomes so we noticed that lots of people started posting on the Facebook group instead, Because on the Facebook group, not only are the talents on the list, they're permitted, but but casting directors are too as well. So there were more posts of casting calls there, but then we were like, okay, this is going to be a problem because not everybody's on social media. And so that limits the access for other people who are not on there. And so we're still in the middle of trying to work out how to make things easier for them.
I just want to chime in that it got to a point where I had to create like an idiot guide of like how to use a database and it literally was like, click on this and then click on this. And then if you do that, you get this. And I had to do it because people were just like, how do you use filtering? I'm like, you guys, most people probably use Excel at this point. Yeah, this is some of the things I get frustrated by. So I'm not envious of what Voices of Color have to do because it's a constant thing. It's just like just use a tutorial and you'll find the people you are seeking for.
Mm-hmm. And like, talking about like the Discord and the Facebook private Facebook group and whatnot. But I think for the PGM VO list, just go to the website if you're interested in learning more about it. And that the website address is pgmvolist.com, right? Yep. So easy. Okay. So we're actually already getting questions from the audience, and just a quick reminder. This is not a reminder because it's the first time I'm saying it, but like if you have any questions, you can just like add them to, if you're watching it on our live YouTube stream or on Facebook, just add your questions onto the comments part. And then there, PGM VO List is the website right there. Fancy, but in the comments, and then we'll have one of our moderators bring it up to us, and it'll be displayed on the screen. Okay, so really quickly, because we have limited time, I want to talk about kind of the diversity of different content in the VO like space. Aside from English dubbing, and and also like voice acting when it comes to like dubbing for like international shows that are on the major streamers, for example. That's a big space. The mainstreaming of anime. Now you see anime. When I was younger, anime was kind of like underground, and now it's like everyone loves anime, right? And like it's everywhere. So like anime is a big space as well, but also like audiobooks and also just like corporate videos, you name it. Like it's like, and all that stuff. So maybe talk about the diversity of everyone here is working in different kind of silos when it comes to the type of VO work they're doing in different silos in the space. So maybe we can start off with actually we'll start with Barry. Barry, based on Oahu, just talk about kind of like how you got involved, and also there's a general theme here that everyone on this panel kind of got into the VO space by happenstance, right? So, and then maybe so you can talk about that and kind of that's a shared experience and finding your next gig and seeing the opportunities. So, Barry, why don't you start off?
Sure. So I've been doing theater since I was just a little keiki. So I've always been in the performance space. And then I fell into VO from auditioning for a short film, and the guy didn't like my look, but he loved my voice. So, and that became the story of my life. So I fell into that, and I just really, really loved it. And I made this just like rinky-dink demo from like some friend's studio in Santa Barbara, and I paid for it with 2 bottles of Chardonnay. But it worked, it worked, and I sent it out to people, and they were like, okay, great. And somebody knew somebody who said, oh, I know this girl Barry, I think she'd be great for your project. And then it just kind of went that way. But it was very piecemeal for me for a long time because I do lots of other stuff. And then the pandemic Lovato hit, and I'd always like in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted voiceover to be my like money job so that I could not have to wait tables or all the other, side gigs that us performers do. And so I said, well, no time like a pandemic, and I got a subscription on Voice 123 instead of just using the little free account, and just started submitting. I will admit, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, my first microphone setup was a HelloFresh box with acoustic foam lining it and a blue snowball mic and a pop screen. That was it. But it worked. It worked, baby. And I started booking and booking and booking and booking. And then clients were coming back for like repeat jobs, which has been really, really amazing to see. And yeah, just I sort of hit the ground running, but I, sort of have learned on the fly. But I have noticed that a lot of the clients that I've worked with notice a difference between me and some of the other people they've worked with. And the ones who are very clever go, "You're a singer, aren't you?" And I say, "Yeah, I am." And they go, "We can tell." And it's that breath support. It's phrasing. It's being able to look ahead of, in my world, it's sheet music, but here it's, an audiobook manuscript. I can look ahead of the phrase before I get there so that I know the flow of what's going. So I've been able to utilize a lot of the skills that I've had since I was a kid, doing musical theater for this particular industry. And I've had crossover stuff, but it's been incredibly rewarding. And honestly, because I have upgraded my system since the HelloFresh box days, not by a whole ton. I've still got, a lower end of the line microphone, sure, and, doing what you do, treating my space. With
unlike Lauren blankets. And Earl, who have like total profession.
Oh, she out there being fancy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I converted the closet in my apartment into a little booth. And it works great. And being able to work at home made it possible for me to move here to Hawaii. Because I don't have family here. I haven't had family here in 15, 20 years. I had no jobs on the ground. So I knew that I would be able to pay my bills doing voiceover, and being able in a way to come home and reconnect with my Kanaka roots and really delve back into, I grew up on the mainland. So like many diaspora Kanaka Maoli can contest to, it is difficult sometimes to connect with your heritage when you don't grow up on the islands. So I took that opportunity to come out here, and it's been really amazing. And now I'm the voice of Central Pacific Bank and HMSA as well, which is funny because I don't have HMSA as my own insurance. But I do a darn good job of narrating their commercials.
So that's great. So maybe next we'll go to Vivi and then Earl. I know your work as actors. I've seen you in the independent film space, and whatnot. And you talk about I've seen you as working actors on the screen. How did you fall into this VO space? And maybe we start off with Vivi.
I also came from a theater background, and when I was at theater school, we actually had a representative come from Audible to explain how the audiobook space was a growing market. And I was really intrigued because I'm an only child, so I spent a lot of time reading books growing up, and I was like, wow, this is a cool job. You could just read books aloud and make money doing that. So I was always really interested in that and did pursue that actively after I graduated from theater school. So I did reach out to various kind of audiobook studios in the area, being if you ever need a Vietnamese narrator, I'm available. And it's been crazy seeing the change over the years, because I did my first book, and I want to say 8 years ago, it was one book and it was an anthology, and I shared it with 3 other narrators, and then nothing came along after that. And then in the recent years, the publishing space has changed so much. It's so diverse now. It's really beautiful. I remember just even being a reader growing up, trying to look for Asian protagonists, and they didn't really exist. And now there's so many. So I'm very grateful right now that the space is changing so much, and they want that authenticity when they're looking for narrators. They're generally trying to find people who match the backgrounds of the authors out there. So that's how I've been working in audiobooks. But with animation for TV, that was also something I'd wanted to break into for so long. But as we also know, that's kind of such a small bubble already in the larger acting space. It's if they got their people and they don't want to expand beyond that. And there wasn't a lot of diversity at the time. I got lucky in that there was a show on a streaming service that was looking for a cultural consultant for an episode where they were setting the show in Vietnam, and they found me. I got cast that way, and then they were casting some voices, and since they knew me from the consultant role and knew I was an actor, I that opened the door for me then. And after booking that show, I ended up getting it was a very backwards process. I got the job, then I got the rep, and then that opened more doors for other animated TV roles.
But I mean, really quickly, because like your ethnic background being Vietnamese American, and the fact that I'm Vietnamese American too, so I'm reading a lot of. I mean, there's a boom of like Vietnamese American authors, like from Ocean Vuong to Pulitzer Prize-winning author Viet Thanh Nguyen, and then like much more. We can't talk about series, but anyway, these books of like a lot of Vietnamese American authors are being published on their bestseller lists and whatnot. Talk about that space too, because you were hired to do these audiobooks for these to narrate, and it's as simple as like pronouncing names correctly or Vietnamese.
Yeah. As you know, Vietnamese is such a tonal language, and if you change the intonation just a little bit, you're going to get a completely different word, different meaning. And so I really appreciate, because I did listen to some audiobooks in the past that were not narrated by people of the same background, and I could tell that it's so nice to have it spoken authentically, no matter what background you're from, because you can tell that just makes the story come to life for the listener, for the reader. So I'm just happy that so many more authors are getting those opportunities to tell their stories now, and as a result, it's helping in the audiobook space.
That's great. Earl, like in the talking about cultural background in the Filipino American film space, with working in like films like Lumpia with a Vengeance and whatnot, and you were also voiced on this like major like animation series that was based on Filipino folklore on a major streaming service. It's like talk about kind of like I don't know. I'm just talking general, but talk about kind of how did you? But I also saw you in various films in the film festival circuit. How did you fall into the VO space?
So it's kind of interesting how similar my story is with Vivi's, and I started off. I minored in theater in college. I didn't get the degree because I was a bio major. Yay. And my parents did not want me to do. Of course, they wanted me to be a doctor. I was pre-med, but I ended up going into improv and comedy, sketch comedy after college, and that's how I met people. I got into like on-camera work, doing commercials, and at the time non-union TV, like dramatization shows and things like that. And I got picked up at by my first agents at a sketch comedy competition. So I got scouted there, and those agents later on sent me an audition that ended up being Tomb Raider that I booked, and I went on to do other things. Like I mentioned before, in the our pre-broadcast, I kind of waffled around trying to do more on camera. Didn't really find my footing in VO until that series came along that was based on Filipino folklore, and through the Filipino channels, I got recommended to that, and that's how I got representation for VO. And since then, it's I've been hit the ground running. That was back in maybe 2015, 26. No, that's not right. Years are weird since the pandemic. 2018. It was one of those years, and ever since then, I've been fortunate enough to get into more video games, more animation, more dubbing, every little nook and cranny of VO. I haven't done audiobook yet, though. No audio, and I haven't Yeah, I haven't done audiobooks, but other than that, yeah. Come here. I
Come to the dark side.
I know. Slowly, he walked up the. I don't know. Just kidding.
All right. I mean, like, but everyone had a theater background, right? So do you think it's like, this like, I mean, voice character work and whatnot? How do you kind of exercise that muscle, so to speak?
I think that's it's really kind of interesting because we're talking about like having a theater background and also a music background. I also have a music background. You can't see, but there are too many instruments surrounding me right now, like more than I should own. And I think that Barry brought up like voice control and breath control. It's super important when you're on the mic, but also working in improv is what I want to say gave me a lot of the tools that I employ in terms of characterization and learning how to change that voice, or to use the qualities of your voice to create a character, not just your accent, but how fast you're speaking, whether or not you are supporting your voice all the way, if you have some kind of vocal characteristic that is like unique, things like that. Yeah.
I don't want to leave Lauren hanging, as our Singapore-based voiceover actor. Lauren, you have a very unique story and how you got into the VO racket, right? So can you talk about your humble beginnings and how you got into it?
Yeah, so I've always liked acting. That's something that I know I want to do, to be an actor, to perform. But because, Singapore is a pretty academic driven country, so I've never really gotten a chance to do that until I went to college in LA. So my acting training pretty much started there. So I would say I don't have as much under my belt. So when and I would say VO really requires a lot of acting fundamentals and a strong base. So I pretty much after like 2 or 3 years of college classes in acting, I wanted to get into VO, and I found out that actors need demos to get agents and stuff. And I found out I heard about a demo producer, a really famous one that I didn't know. I didn't know he was a popular demo producer then. So I just hit him up. It's Jeff Howell, by the way. I emailed him and I said, what are your and I inquired about making a demo, and he said, have you taken classes? Have you taken voice acting specific classes? And I said, in college? Yeah. and he was like, no, that's not enough. You need to get like specific like commercial training. Specifically also because commercial VO is the moneymaker. And so that was sort of like a wake-up call. When I started taking classes, I saw like, whoa, the difference, the improvement, and it was just, yeah, I would recommend classes for VO. But also I think I was able to move forward in my career so quickly, also thanks to the PGM VO List, because I've gotten opportunities from there that I wouldn't have imagined ever getting like 2 to 3 years into my career. Like I've gotten even like just maybe like 1 or 2 years into my training and in this space, in VO space, I've gotten paid opportunities, and I was like, I was prepared to like just be here, like get jobs for exposure, because like that's what you're expected to do as like a starving actor kind of thing. But yeah, so really grateful for the PGM VO List, and really excited to be able to take part in managing this list now. Yeah.
But then, like you, I mean, can you talk about kind of your pandemic experience? Because you were still in college in the US,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then the pandemic happened.
Mhm.
And so you moved back to Singapore, and
Yeah.
you basically the rest of your college career was on Zoom essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I would say even though I had like, I made connections and while I was in the US, I would say if I were entirely based in Singapore at that time, I would have still been able to have access to all the classes. Um, yeah, all the classes, they were just online and available. And so, and this past year when I was working in Singapore, I it is harder for me to audition for things through my agent because union stuff is really US based. um and so I there weren't that many opportunities from my agent, but I was able to um go out to like conventions and stuff. I started going to like gaming conventions because I was like, hey, I
in
actually work a lot in
gaming and okay, got it. Yeah.
yeah, like where game devs go to. And so that's one thing I realized I could do, like direct marketing and just getting to know people. I think it's really important to network and genuinely interact with people in the same industry as well as like connecting industries. And like even if the opportunities don't come directly, there's always a chance of them introducing you to their friend or whatever. So it's yeah, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to make it for VO because VO is everywhere, really. Yeah.
And then I mean, we have this private chat going on. Like, you guys there's so many in jokes, man. You're making me. I'm trying to hide my laugh. But anyway, I mean, there's other, you can talk about. I mean, Barry, you talked about Voice 123. What is that?
Sure. So one of the questions in the line is about how to audition for voice acting. There you go, Jose. Hola, Jose. I started off using Voice 123, which is a pay-to-play site. You can set up a free account. You'll get like a couple of breakdowns at sporadic times. So if you just kind of want to like dip your toe in and see what it's like to submit to auditions for voiceover, that's a great way to start. There's other pay-to-play sites. There's voices.com. Oh God, I'm blanking. There's like what, 3 or 4 kind of big major pay-to-plays. But then of course you would get breakdowns from an agent, and I am represented by AB2, and I got that just from literally submitting my demos to a bunch of different voiceover agencies. So my current career is a mix of that and former clients coming back. I did audiobooks for the Library of Congress for a long time, so I'm still doing that. Submitting to different audiobook production houses. I'm working on one for B Audio right now. So there's a lot of different like pools that you can jump into, which is really nice because AB2, it's one of the VO agencies based in LA, but obviously we can work remotely. Oh, there you go. I want to be a voiceactor.com. That sounds like a very comprehensive place to go. Yeah, so there's a lot of different places, and it's nice to kind of spread your voiceover-ness to a lot of different places so that they can, one place may not be specifically looking for a Spanish-speaking Kanakamali at the time, but maybe someplace else is. So there you go.
I mean, and Barry and Vivi, you seem to have found a space or groove in audiobooks and whatnot. It seems that our other panelists are into primarily, like a lot of it's gaming as well. So can you talk about how you kind of carved out your space? And it's like, you're a known entity when it comes to casting, right? Like when it comes to like gaming, it's going to be Earl or whatever for some character role, right? So can you talk about kind of like finding your space, your groove in those particular silos?
Well, I would also say, like, just trying to get into audiobooks, there's a space called ACX, and you can literally find all these different books and you can submit auditions for it, and the author chooses, and you don't need an extensive resume. If you just feel like this book speaks to you, or you just want introduction, like your first time into audiobooks, it's a really accessible way to do it. And so I encourage anyone who does have an interest in audiobooks. I do warn though, because this was something I learned. Audiobooks are definitely a marathon as opposed to doing voice acting for like TV and film or commercial or whatever, because you are reading a book. And sometimes you're reading a short book, or sometimes you're reading part of an anthology, but sometimes you're reading like a 300-page book, and that's going to take days. So that's the only thing I warn about audiobooks there. But it's a very open world there if you're interested. I would definitely recommend that avenue.
Lauren and Earl, I mean, you seem to be working a lot in the gaming space. And can you talk about kind of being a recognized entity when it comes to potentially being hired in that kind of for video games? Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah, it totally makes sense. I'm just thinking about how that happened.
Okay, like let's you guys can stew on it, but so this will be perfect too. I mean, the next question is for Edward. Edward, like, you know, you started the list. You're an actor yourself. You kind of did this on necessity, out of anger. You know, especially with the the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and whatnot. And then like you now kind of like go over to like actually voiceover directing and casting. You know, so that's that's how I met you when like. I met you before, but like met you, especially, I mean, just by accident, by happenstance at a audio studio, and I saw you directing some dubbing for major streaming K-drama show. Talk about kind of moving into that space, and what do you recognize, and how do you identify when it comes to casting? And then this is like buying time for Earl and Lauren to come up with their answers.
It's funny, like in terms of dubbing directing, it just came my way because one individual just knew that I was such an angry person, and he was just like, and he knew I was the founder of the PGM VO List, and he was just like, I want to give this guy a shot. He seems very angry. Let's see what happens. And so I remember it was like well into the project. I remember asking him, like, why did you think it was a good idea asking me to do these? It was like, I think you could do it. You definitely had a lot of anger in you. So I was like, all right, I guess that works. So it happened early last year. And then since then, I've been able to direct other projects for various streaming networks. And what I've noticed in terms of casting and in terms of English dubbing, voiceover stuff, it's in some ways not too different from other, let's say, video games or whatnot, because basically what it is that as a casting director, you get hundreds, if not like more auditions, and you hear the same thing over and over and over again. And I've heard stories from casting directors on camera and voiceover and theater and whatnot, where they talk about like, that actor that stands out, like, what is that thing that makes them so special? And I wasn't really sure what the heck that was. I mean, we've all heard it until you get into it yourself and you realize what that is. And it really is just what I've noticed for me particularly, and every casting director is different, what makes them get their ears or, their attention span a little more perked up. And for me, it's just life, like hearing life. Like it's especially voiceover editions, it can be so easy to make it sound like it's just something you just read, because you don't have to memorize it. You just read it on a phone or a paper, and and a lot of actors make the mistake of just doing that. And it sounds technically good, and there's some emotions here and there, but it doesn't sound like what's going on here, like what's this thing, or just like little things like the scene starts off, and the guy or girl seems a little like rushed in, like they just came from somewhere. So I appreciate when actors kind of like, even before the line even starts, they're like, oh, and then they start the audition. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. I like that. I like what you did that. And so these little things add to without like, you know, completely erasing the writer's work. You're still honoring the words that the writer gave you, but you're giving it something that makes it feel like it's a lived-in experience. And that to me is essential. And so when someone does that and understand the assignment, I always love actors do that. And because and a lot of times it may not be right, because a lot of times in dubbing, they do tend to want voice matches. They want an actor to sound very similar to the original actor. So a lot of times I have so many auditions where they're like, oh man, that audition was amazing. Like it's astounding. I just can't use you. Like you're like, especially if it's like the role is a 17-year-old high-pitched, you know, guy or girl. And, you know, and then I have like this older gentleman or woman who audition, and I'm just like, you know, they try their best to sound like a 17-year-old. I'm like, oh, you're really trying, but you're a really good actor. So I'm going to find something. I'm going to find something that works for that. And so I would tell actors that if they get an audition and it says 17-year-old, you know, like high pitched voice, and they're like, oh man, I can't audition for that. There's just no way I could audition for that. I would tell that actor to just do it, because more often than not, they tend to use that audition for other characters, because there's most likely going to be older adult characters or other things that doesn't fit that the parameters, but they got the audition. It sounded awesome. You did good work, and they'll remember that. And so anytime actors get confused why this audition was sent, I would say it was sent with a purpose. Like, it can seem random at times, but just do it. You have nothing else to lose. And there's times where like I have actors where I haven't used them in a while because it was just the right one didn't come along. And so I think it's always like, don't get, you know, bummed out if you don't get one job, because casting directors, especially those who do their job well, like they will remember really awesome ones. And so it's just putting in the work, put in life. Like if you listen to the audition again, it sounds pretty stagnant or stale. Like what can you do to add a little more something to it, like a breath or a laugh or like a long pause? Like it's just these little things can make people pay attention more. And I think that's the thing. You want to basically get them to pay attention within the first 10 seconds. Like, because honestly, I think casting directors, as best as, you know, as hard as they may try, they're kind of like squirrels. You know, you need to really like get their attention pretty quickly. Otherwise, you know, they're not going to listen to the 2 minutes. I mean, ideally they should, so they can see if the actor really gets into it. But you got to nail it in that first 10 seconds. Otherwise, they're going to get bored real fast. So that's my advice to our actors as a casting director. Like, what can you do to make it interesting? But try not to be crazy about it, because I think the goal of being interesting is that they try to do crazy choices. It's just to be interested in your piece, as opposed to trying to sound like, you know, I'm a pirate now, yarg, you know, kind of thing. You know, don't go crazy. I've heard crazy auditions, and that's not, you know, those aren't good. It's just committed, interested choices that make sense to the character is what I'm looking for actors to stand out.
Okay, so Earl and Lauren, maybe Vivi too, or everyone's like, what is? Maybe I'll add more to my question, and then just more on the gaming and anime, because you're basically voicing characters with unique character traits. So what makes you unique and hireable when it comes to, maybe is it a particular kind of character or voice or tone or what, or baritone or whatever that you're known for when it comes to being cast in various gigs that you're on?
Wait, like personally, like what I'm known for?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like for example,
okay.
Tomb Raider. You're in the Tomb Raider series and whatnot. Maybe talk about your character, and then is that kind of like, it's like, again, like Edward said, like, you know, casting directors are like squirrels, right? Like it's like, you know, like it's like, you know, just what are the tags that you kind of like the you know, that identify you as you're this guy, or you're.
I think that it's definitely, a lot of it is just this voice. So I mean, and honestly, I'm not going to say I fall back on that a lot, but it does give you a lot of range in terms of
So is that like your voice is like Don Toretto as a wizard?
Don Toretto as a wizard. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, The Last Witch. What is that? I Can't Talk Films. But it is definitely. I'm gonna say it's something like what Edward is saying is like you find your niche, you know, and despite the fact that you do have like a unique voice, what really matters is the performance in the end, and to really when you turn in an audition to have a point of view. I think that's like super important, and to make sure that point of view comes across when you're doing your read. Like you have these words, and but what is your character? What do you think about what you're saying and who you're addressing when you're speaking these words? And I think trying to find space in the voiceover realm, I mean, in the video game realm, is much like finding your way in any other type of voice acting. Is you find ways to make your read unique in terms of like what you can bring in terms of viewpoint, and you keep on doing good work. And like what Edward said is like you might not get that role that you auditioned for, but the more and more you audition, you send out good auditions, people will remember you. And you might not book the thing that you originally submitted read for, but one day you're going to get a call out of nowhere and they're going to be like, I remembered you from this. Let's direct book you to this other project. It happens all the time. And so it is really like with every audition, like put forward a good read, the best read you can, and really put some time into it and think about like where this person that you're trying to protect, person or creature or whatever deity you're trying to portray, where they're coming from. So,
Lauren?
Yeah, and I can attest to that because, like, for I think Black Desert Online was one of the one of my most recent and also probably one of my biggest roles so far. I didn't audition for it. I just got called in, and I was like, they asked for my avail and everything. And I was like, did I audition for this? And I was looking through my emails. And I was like, I don't think so. I at first it was like it was for like a cinematic trailer thing. So I thought, okay, so like one and done. But then I ended up working with them like, I don't know, 3 or 4-hour sessions. And I was like, whoa, this is getting bigger than I thought it was gonna be. Yeah, so always, and it's for a studio that I've been auditioning for a while. So like even if you don't get the job right now, it's always worth in the long run. Yeah, and I think something about and I think this goes for most of the different genres in VO as well. It's identifying tone when you're auditioning and identifying like yeah, how it's like yeah, tone is the right word. Yeah, especially like in gaming as well. And in gaming or in video games, there are several different tones itself because of the different uh
like types of games.
Types of games. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to identify puts you in a like a way ahead than everybody else, just because immediately you sound like you're part of that world, and it's easy for the it's just easier on the ear, I guess, for players that are used to or familiar with that genre. Yeah.
And I assume you are a gamer yourself. You know, you're doing the homework, you consume, and you're playing it, and so you recognize kind of the traits, right, when it comes to what kind of voice is needed for a particular genre of a game or whatever, right? So same thing with animated programs or whatnot, and or even voiceover when it comes to commercials and whatnot, right? So okay, let's go for the next question. I think we have a question from Vicky. It's going to pop up soon on the screen. Any tips? Hi, Vicky. Any tips for teens/tweens looking to break into voice acting? Anyone else? Edward.
I mean, I just had a joke from my partner when she's overhearing this. Live your life, child. It's you live. No. If the teen tween wants to get into voice acting, I mean, like it's like age is but a number. So it's like, regardless if you're a teen or you're in your 60s or older, like, you could start whenever. And in terms of where to start, it is like, we talked about it, like here, like read the resource iwannabeavoiceactor.com. Was created by a legendary voice actor, D. Bradley Baker. I think I said his name right. He created this astounding guide for people who are thinking about starting, who are already started, and who are veterans. It was designed for people of all different ranges. And so, especially,
it's very comprehensive.
Yeah, for a parent, if you're interested in your child to get into voice acting, I would recommend starting by reading this, like in terms of like what equipments you need, what kind of, if you're setting up a home studio, what's a good demo reel, like every single question you can possibly think of, it's most likely covered in this website. So then that it kind of spares you the manual labor of like trying to explain how to get into voice acting. Just guide them to this website. That's what this website was designed for. And so I would recommend starting with that. And then if your child, if the teen is serious about it, they can continue further, like, doing audition, like what Barry's saying with Voice 123, or like, ACX, as Vivi said, or there's so many different avenues of like, where to find auditions. Actually, I'll pull up a link. There's like a Excel sheet that has like all these different public forms to fill out. So I'm going to look that up and put it on the link. But anyways.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
I just wanted to pop in really, really fast. I know I shrugged my shoulders, but something did occur to me. If you have any adult friends who also do voiceover, who maybe live nearby you, a lot of times I'll see breakdowns for like, we're looking for an adult and a child. So if you have a child at home, like, submit your audition together. So that can be a nice way to kind of get your foot in the doors if you sort of piggyback on with what an adult voiceover actor is doing. That's a good way to start it out.
But there's also like, and then correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, obviously there's like, for minors, child labor laws, right? When it comes to like having to have like a onset teacher or whatever, but it varies per state from what I'm told, right? So like it's like I think California versus say Vermont or Texas, the laws are a little different when it comes to the amount of hours. Am I talking out of my butt, Edward?
No, it's true. I just think that's a little like cart before the horse thing. I think in this case, like if there's interest on the teen's part, like at the like. Ultimately, it's about listening and responding. So if there's any interest in like acting class, improv class, that to build that base even to begin with, I'd suggest. And then if there are voiceover technique classes in your area, even online, there's so many resources now. I would encourage that. And then also just in relation to that, I also feel like there's so many different pathways to this business, because some people, like Kristen Shaw, for example, only uses her one voice, and that's like she's made her money on her one voice, and that's fine. And then other people are like Tara Strong can play like 50 million different voices. So you find what you're strong at. If you feel like you're great at mimicking and doing all sorts of things with your voice, and that's fantastic. And if you feel like you have an amazing voice like Earl and you don't have to change anything about it and make your money on that way, like that's the beauty of this part of the business, I think.
Actually, I would like to add to that. I think depending on what you want to do as well, like in VO, there are like different coaches that you can find, and especially at such a young age, I think definitely investing in classes would be worth it, especially because I realized that it's not just learning from teachers, but also making connections with them. And because in my experience, that's where I got a lot of my opportunities, just because, ideally, your teacher would be someone who's currently working and they have their network in the industry. And so they will somehow receive auditions and stuff and opportunities that fit your spec. And so as their student, they want you to do well, or as your teacher, they want you to do well. And so that's where your opportunities will come. Yeah.
I would also say that half of this job is being able to take direction. I mean, that kind of goes for almost every acting job, but I think voiceover especially, because nobody's seeing your face, nobody's seeing your body language. It's literally just your voice. So, and I'm sure you can all attest to this. Sometimes you're in a directed session and the person directing it maybe isn't an actor. Maybe they're more on the, advertising side or the corporate side of whatever the project is. And they'll be like, and everybody take a shot when I say the number one thing you've ever heard in a directed session. Say it like you're talking to a friend. And it's like, that's like the number one thing you hear. And like what that means to them may mean something different to you. So you have to be able to like kind of hear the direction between the direction and give them what you think that they want, but also what you think that they think that you think that they want. You know what I mean? So taking acting classes and taking stuff like that and really taking it to heart, and not being too precious about what you think the spot should be, because at the end of the day, it's the client that's paying you. So give them choices. Give them all of the choices that you can think of, even if it maybe feels a little weird to you. Maybe that's exactly what they wanted to hear, and you just magically stepped into it. It's a good way to go.
Okay, so we have limited time. I want to go through all these questions. We actually got one from Jen May, which is interested in setting up a home studio. That's like a first way to get geared up, and talking about maybe specific gear, working on a type of budget. Maybe talk about what wares you. Barry touched upon that, but maybe what's a kind of like basic like equipment you would need to set up your quote unquote home studio.
I really think it depends on like what stage you're in your career, but also what your budget is. You kind of tailor your setup to how much you can afford. Like when I first started, it was honestly like Barry, it wasn't even a blue snow. What is it? Snowball. I had a blue snowflake, which is the even smaller version, and it's like the first. I booked my first VO gig ever on that little mic. The 20. It was like $40 mic. So it was a USB mic. And there's a plethora of USB mics at like every level of budget. There's the Blue Yeti is about what a lot of people start with. There's the AT2020, the Audio Technica 2020 that comes in the USB version. Those are great to start with. There's a lot of other mics that are very affordable. This mic it's Neat King B. This was actually $100 mic, which is like, it's not a lot in terms of like how much you could theoretically spend on microphones. I do have an audio interface. Like if you wanted something that will last you a little longer, instead of getting a USB mic, you get an audio interface. Scarlett, Focusrite, those are names you should look into. Those are pretty affordable. I used one of those for 5-6 years before I upgraded. So the Scarlett 2i2, and then like AT2020, that's a good mic to start off with. A Rode NT1, a lot of people use that. And then a good set of cans. They don't have to be super expensive. The Sony MDRs run about 100. These are 140. But you don't have to use those in particular. There are like cheaper ones. I had ones called the Status CB1s, which cost me about $60. Samsung 950s, those are about $60 if I remember correctly, but they lasted me a long time and they booked me a lot of work. So And you know, like the website that Edward brought up, VO Ross, not VO roster, but like I want to be a voice actor. There are some gear recommendations on there as well, if I remember correctly. I might be not remembering correctly.
Were we able to share the link that Edward was looking for? The rosters, databases, and okay, great. Oh yeah, it says the moderator said yes. Thanks, Aaron. Maybe, I mean, Vivi, is this your home studio? You're using your home?
Yeah, so I'm just using a PVC booth behind me, and it's got some like sound dampening blankets over it. But even when I was early in the pandemic, when I had to record and audition from home, I was using a Yeti Blue. I booked a few jobs doing that, and I was literally in my closet, dampened the sound with a bunch of clothes, and that got me through that before I could upgrade. And I will say, even like I booked a job for like a major streaming service. They sent a mic, a USB mic. It's an Apogee Mic Plus. It's like $200. That's what they sent for their equipment, and that's what we recorded the entire show on. So it's very possible to not have. You don't have to spend a ton of money to create a home setup. And yeah, you can adapt it as you go. But again, it's very possible to get work from not having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars.
Lauren, your setup looks very much something out of 2001. Can you talk about your setup?
I was working out of a walk-in closet previously, so that was easier to set up because it's just clothes and then the mic. But when I came back, I don't have a walk-in closet here, so I had to figure out how to build a space. And so I think this was not that expensive too, because I just got like IKEA shelf units. So like not the entire shelf that you're supposed to build, but like one part of it where it stands like right here. And I just attached like foam on it. Foam is not the best, but it's what I can work with right now. And then I have like a like I put my foam on top onto like cardboard and stuff, and that's my roof. But I've like that works, but I'd also have to catch like a good timing where there's no like you'd have to have people not talking in the living room and or like buses passing by. So but for me, but if you're like if your unit is like pretty much not close to the road and just I think it's a pretty workable. Also what is it? Sound dampening, like moving blankets. Those like work really well too. Yeah, just like as a basic setup. Yeah. And my mic is so I started off with like a gaming mic just because I already had it. But when I like really got into auditioning, I was just like, I'm like invest a bit more, but like not too much. Something that I can work with for a while, and I think it's pretty worth it. I got a TechZone Stellar X2 for like $200, and like a Solid State Logic. I caught the sale at that time, so I think it was around 200 to 300 too.
The
The SSL2 interface. And so overall for a good setup, it's not like nothing too much more than $500, and a good, like, I think the most important thing is your space, because even with my mic, like with a good space and good like mic positioning, it can sound really good. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions because we have to have the hard out in 10 minutes. So I think we have one from Carol. Yeah. My background is writing and teaching, not theater or music. Should I think about VO or speech or theater classes, or just dive in and see what happens? That's for everyone.
It's not writing and teaching is not applicable to voiceover. Like it's sort of hard to say because I was actually just having this conversation. There are certain authors who narrate their own books who are magnificent. And like they're writers first, you know, but they also have this incredible capability of storytelling. And then there are some authors who narrate their own books and they're not very good at all. So I don't think that having a background in writing is necessarily like across the board, like, oh, well, you're not going to be very good at voiceover. I would certainly recommend taking voiceover classes or speech or theater classes. I think that's only going to benefit you. But yeah, I guess the question is more about like, how do you gauge when you're the one, you know, speaking, how do you gauge where you fall and how marketable whatever it is that you're doing is. So I would recommend giving like make a demo of some kind or practice and then send it off to a friend that you trust and ask them like, hey, you know, what does this sound like to you? But send it to somebody who does have an acting background, who does have a voiceover background, so that they can listen to it with that kind of ear, because you may not have developed that ear yet. You may be a totally natural talent. Like there's every reason to believe that. But like get an outside opinion, whether it's taking a class or, you know, sending, like, hell, if you want to email it to me, I'll give you feedback. I'm more than happy to help.
Yeah, this can, I mean, and this perfect segues into kind of like your own portfolio, right? Like it's like like a website with kind of like your voice reels and whatnot, right? Can you talk about like the basic like assets that you should have to represent yourself? Maybe a website that has your samples or whatnot. What are the things that helps, makes it easy for you to kind of send a link to, this is my portfolio of work?
Yeah, like a website is perfect, like a whole package. It's really it's accessible because it's just one link for someone to click on and everything comes out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just because like, we for example, I'm programming films for my film festival, and like, just like getting assets from filmmakers, it's so hard to just like, can you give me an image or a press kit or a bio, and like, it's like, I don't understand why. I don't know. This is not my therapy session, but like, it's like this. I don't understand why basic assets are so hard to deliver. Why, actors? Why?
I don't know. But some people just need to be told. Even like, especially actors, like or people who aren't necessarily tech savvy or don't have a lot of experience with creating a website. It's like, but yeah, what Lauren said is just have everything on a page if you want to. Even if it's like simple, super simple, something like a card landing page, and just have all your demos there or links to all your demos there. That can be a really important calling card for you to get like your name and your word out. Social media helps, honestly. Like I feel like I've gotten a lot of work through social media, in particular Twitter, and made a lot of, which it sucks, but I've made a lot of connections on there. So yeah.
Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. We have a question from Jose. Would you recommend doing an audition having 3 different voice styles or the same style in 3 different variations? I assume this is for a open call. I mean, like a casting session for a role. I don't know. I mean, Edward, since you're
it honestly depends on the audition. Some people don't want that many. Like some people just do one take and just nail it, or like do the best you got. Some will welcome multiple variations, but in terms of like voice styles or variations, there's no real clear answer. It's as long as it makes sense to the story or the product. Like if it's a commercial audition, like if it's for a car commercial or whatever it is, like you should research what commercials they've done in the past and what tone they've gone for, because most likely they're going for that. Now it's possible that it could be a radically different campaign, but more often not, there's a through line of like what the company is known for. And same with like the project, like, you know, let's say if it's a pre-existing video game, like just you can literally YouTube it, like what have the previous voice actors done for that? Like you get the tone of that. So you could do one, and you know, there are auditions I know personally where the characters seemed like it was written as a mild-mannered person, like it was like a mild-mannered dad. And then I did a take where he was just off the hinge mad. And then when I booked the project, it was that they wanted the madder, crazier dad. And I was like, oh, and they're like, yeah, we thought he was going to be a very, you know, chill dad, but you were really pissed off on something. And I'm like, cool, thank you. And so it's
being pissed off is a common theme here, Eddie.
It is. And so it's just like, as long as it makes sense to the story, like obviously the scene was like he was frustrated at a person, and so it was written as if it was mild mannered. But I was like, if that was me, I would not be so mild about it. I would be really pissed. And so it makes sense. As long as it makes sense to what you're given, then do that choice, as long as you commit to it. Now, if it's just some crazy choice out of left and there was no thought to it, it's easy to tell that there was no thought behind it. So, you know, do the work and make the choice. And then, yes, you can have a choice where it's the safety choice, where it's like, oh, this is the more mild version, but you give them that variation. So as to numbers of it, it just depends on what the addition is.
I would also say, and this is based on what I've heard from casting directors, only do like a different take if it's really different, because casting directors don't have a lot of time, like Edward has mentioned before. There, you know, sometimes when you do, you know, you read a sentence in a different way, but it's not like vocally or characteristically different. It's not that big of a difference, so I wouldn't say that would be enough of a justification to do a second take. And you want to be, and you know, you want to. I would say most of the time, your only take would be the most committed and the most, you know, just like, because I feel like when you try to make different takes, it sounds less committed, and it's more like, oh, I'm trying to show you I have a range, rather than I do have a range. You're like trying, and it's not so it's just best to stick to one take and commit yourself fully to it. Yeah. Unless in the instructions it says give us 2 takes.
Okay.
A lot of times the voiceover is the very last thing that goes into a commercial spot or whatever. So be open, or give yourself the opportunity to make bolder choices than you might normally do if you were, you know, reading in person for a role, because they could just decide at the last minute, you know what, like we've got the actors that are on screen, we've got the product, but we want to like have the tone go in a very different way. And the way that they change that is with the voiceover. So yeah, and that's usually why they will be asking for more than one take, is so that they have multiple, you know, tones to pick from.
Let's say thank you for our esteemed panelists for joining this inaugural HIFILM panel. I want to thank Barry, Lauren, Vivi, Earl, and Eddie for joining us today. You know, really quickly, this is going to be archived, and so it's going to live on our various like YouTube and Facebook and whatnot at HIFF, the various social media platforms. And also, so that concludes our first HIFILM panel. I'm sorry, I got to read the housekeeping stuff really quick. We're strengthening our efforts to be a one-stop resource for Hawaii's film, TV, and creative content industry, with more panels, workshops, and masterclasses to be scheduled during our festival seasons and throughout the year. Many of them are free, but we encourage you to consider joining our industry membership for just an annual fee of only $30. Your generous industry membership helps HIFF as an arts nonprofit organization, but also gets you on our industry mailing list for all HIFF HIFILM events, early access to screenings, and more. Just go to HIFF.org HIFILM.com/membership for more information and to join. Also, the 43rd annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Hale Kalani is right around the corner and will be a few weeks earlier this year than previously. It's always been in November, but mark your calendars for October 12th to 22nd on Oahu, October 26th to 29th on Maui and Kauai, October 30th, November 1st on Lanai, and November 2nd and 5th on the Big Island, Hilo side. For more info and updates, go to HIFF.org. Again, mahalo to our esteemed panelists, Barry, Lauren, Vivi, Earl, and Eddie. And we'll see everyone soon. Mahalo.